trial was judged by 2 neurosurgeons who had never done a brainstem glioma. I have published the largest series of brainstem gliomas in the literature, and in that series I showed that the poor outcome rate was 6%. Yet I was told by these doctors who have never done one that I should have told the patient that the risk was 70%, because in their hands it would have been 70%. And they're telling the truth. In their hands it would have been 70%. Again, the worst thing about it, I'm going to be fine, okay? I'm operating overseas. I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm giving a lot of respect. I'm teaching overseas neurosurgeons, so I'm fine. The saddest thing is what's happening in Australia. And what's happening in Australia is that talented, good neurosurgeons are no longer taking risks because they saw what happened to me, and they're not taking out tumours that can be taken out, and they could take them out. And I see them every day. I promise you, Jenny, I see them every day. Cases where I know the surgeon, I know how good they are, I know they could do it, and they choose not to. The system is broken. So the system is where you've got a governing body that's almost like institutionalised narcissism. And what I mean by that is that a narcissist controls, they surveillance, and then they silence. And that's exactly what the governing bodies are doing. They control on the basis that they are doing it for the greater good, the public's greater good. So they are under the guise of this omniscient, good body that knows exactly how to bring stray doctors into control. So what that means is that they basically controlled by regulation, controlled by mandates, controlled by codes of conduct, and all those things are very reductionist. I have the highest H index out of any neurosurgeon in Australia, which is your measure of academic integrity. So the most reputable academic neurosurgeon in Australia was not allowed to bring up any sort of past. And the judge then goes, no, we can't discuss the 11,000 cases. We're here to discuss the 2 patients on the table. That's all. And my lawyers go, well, hang on, you're criticising him for making a surgical decision of operability. Surely you want to know if his track record's good or not. Like if his track record was bad, then you're right, he shouldn't have recommended surgery. But can we please tell you about his track record, which he's published in a peer-reviewed journal? Nope. I wasn't allowed to bring that up. Everyone thinks it was a court of law. It was not a court of law. So they don't have to find proof beyond doubt. It's they get the opinion of a couple of your competitors who have been publicly against me in the past, but that didn't mean anything. And it's not just me. I mean, the whole process has been labelled as, corrupt and lacking due process and all this kind of stuff. And there's been royal commissions and Senate inquiries. They've all condemned the system. So it's not as if it's ever had a clean bill of health. It's always been condemned. But the last royal commission came up with 100 and odd recommendations. It was like 128 recommendations, of which only 2 were followed through on. So, these royal commissions and Senate inquiries, they're all good intentions of trying to improve the system. But when it comes down to it, APRA has total autonomy. It is accountable to no one, not federal government, not state government. It can do whatever it likes. So there's not a single doctor in APRA. So you are judged by pen pushers, bureaucrats sitting behind a desk, knowing full well that people are dying because of their decisions, or maybe not even knowing that. But the bottom line is that people are dying because of their bad decisions. If you're a member of the fraternity, if you are part of the boys' club, you can do anything you like because that's how unfair the system is. There's one rule for Charlie Teo, and there's a rule for a member of the College of Surgeons or a counsellor on the College of Surgeons. It's all about surveillance. And what does surveillance do? It's like the panopticon. And what that means is that, you're constantly being watched, you're in fear, you're worried that you're going to do something that will upset them or transgress, whatever they consider as the norm. So you become docile and you toe the party line. And what does that do for patients? It treats patients like some sort of number or some sort of diagnosis code, And really, that's the message I'd love to get across to people, that, you know, these hurdles are put in front of you, not to stop you, but for you to just climb over them and become better, bigger and better. And you know, you've got to stay positive, Jeannie. And the conversation we had before the podcast was, you know, both of us were sort of disturbed and worried that it won't change. But we can't think that way. We've got to think that people like you, Health Alliance Australia, people like me who have a voice, you know, we will change the diaspora, and we will change the whole, you know, sort of landscape of medicine and the way it's delivered and the way doctors are governed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Health Alliance Australia's podcast. My name is Jeannie Rose Anchbartha, and we have Professor Charlie Teo with us today, who should need no introduction. He is one of the top brain surgeons in the world, known for pioneering minimally invasive techniques for complex brain tumours deemed inoperable by many other surgeons. He has completed over 11,000 brain surgeries, and he is one of only 3 surgeons in the world that can perform brainstem glioma surgeries. Known as a miracle worker, Dr. Teo devotes 3 months of every year instructing and doing live surgeries pro bono in developing countries. At the age of 67, he continues to operate and mentor neurosurgeons in other parts of the world, with a low 6% complication rate and compared to an average of 70% for brainstem glioma surgeries. He is one of the best. He's best of the best. Outrageously, since July 2023, Professor Charlie Teo has essentially been banned from operating in Australia, in what could be best described as a medical witch hunt. The mainstream media has been complicit in not only failing to report fairly on this case against him, but also making up lies about him, including that he operated on the wrong side of the brain, in an ongoing campaign to destroy his personal and professional reputation. He has been subject to multiple ongoing character assassinations in the media. His story highlights the very dangerous degree of institutional oppression, bullying and coercion in Australia, and how it destroys lives. Thank you for coming today, Professor Teo.
That's a lovely introduction, and sadly true, but thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So I actually mentioned to my mother today that I was interviewing you, and she actually knew who you were, which is actually a first, and it's actually her birthday today. So
oh, well, happy birthday to your mum.
I was thinking to myself when I was telling her that I was interviewing you, that many people do know your name and they have seen your photo. But if you ask them something about you, they would probably pick up some headline from the media. And so I'm going to take you back to a quote that you said about 2 years ago, when it says, "If you step outside the box, if you offer contrary second opinions, then we will get you, because if you can get Charlie Teo, we can get anyone." And I think that's a really true statement. It hits the nail on the head as to that this story of yours is actually far bigger than Charlie Teo.
And that's I think the worst thing that's come of my persecution is the knock-on effect. And the knock-on effect is exactly that all I did at the end of the day, and even my greatest detractors will admit to this, so even Kate McClymont, who led the media campaign against me, even she said, look, he's a talented surgeon. We're not disputing that. So the worst thing that's come out of this is that a talented surgeon, by their own admission, can be destroyed for simply offering contrary second opinions. That's basically, it distills down to that very problem about me. And that is that when others have called tumours inoperable, I've called them operable. It's really the problem. And so what you have now is a situation where very talented doctors who are still working in Australia go, oh my God, if you can destroy him because he didn't give a consent that they wanted him to give, if he gave a contrary second opinion, then what chance have we got of surviving the system? And so what they do, they become docile and they become very complicit and toe the party line. And towing the party line means that we are, you have to dumb yourself down to the lowest common denominator. So if some terrible surgeon who has bad results honestly and authentically says to a patient, look, I think that tumour is inoperable, but, go and see Dr. X. Well, Dr. X now has to say, yes, it's inoperable. So my restrictions, if you read them, you can read them, it's open to the public. My restrictions are that I am no longer allowed to call a tumour operable, even if I think it's operable. And even if I think that even if I've done thousands of them before and have shown clearly in the literature that I can take this tumour out, I can't tell the patient it's operable without permission from another doctor who may not have the same experience as me, probably won't have the same experience as me, who maybe has never even done one of those operations. I can't even tell the patient that it's operable or that I can offer surgery until I get permission of that person.
Wow. So basically we are going down to the lowest common denominator. I mean, it's not even based on any, science or anything like risk benefit. Your punishment.
No. In fact, they ignored science because at the Professional Standards Committee hearing, I was judged by two neurosurgeons who had never done a brainstem glioma. I have published the largest series of brainstem gliomas in the literature. And in that series, I showed that the poor outcome rate was 6%. Yet I was told by these doctors who have never done one that I should have told the patient that the risk was 70%, because in their hands, it would have been 70%. And they're telling the truth. In their hands, it would have been 70%. But now I have to tell a patient, even if my figures show that my complication rate is 6%, I have to tell a patient that, well, I can't tell the patient I can operate anymore, but if I was allowed to operate, I'd have to tell the patient, yes, the tumour is operable, but the complication rate is 70%, which is ridiculous. It's absurd.
And that goes to things like not taking something as well. So if the standard of care is to take a certain medication or certain, gene therapy, and if the system says you must take it, then they have no choice really but to comply, even if they don't agree. It's in that patient's best interest.
Well, I would say the precedent is set, but it isn't, because there's one rule for one person, another rule for another person. So, if you're a member of the fraternity, if you are part of the boys' club, you can do anything you like, because that's how unfair the system is. So just by way of example, I was on Ando's Brush with Fame, where I told a story about how a neurosurgeon came to my office and said, Charlie, you've got to stop doing what you're doing. And I said, well, hang on, I'm getting good results. I'm operating on tumours that other people have called inoperable. I'm getting the tumours out. Patients are doing well. I'm curing some people. And I gave him an example of one of those people who'd been told their tumour was inoperable. And I said, look at this scan. He looked at it. I go, well, could you take that out? And he goes, yes. I go, but you want me to tell that mother that that tumour is inoperable because the surgeons in Melbourne said it was inoperable. And he says, Charlie, I do that every day. When I told that story in Ando, a member of the public was so disturbed by it, he wrote a letter of complaint to the medical governing bodies, APRA or ACCC, and said, yes, and if you heard this story on Ando's Brush with Fame last night, then, something should be done about this. Can you please look into it? Well, rather than look into the person who said that, they gunned for me. And they wrote me a letter saying that you cannot say disparaging things about colleagues in the media. And if you do that again, we're going to carry out disciplinary action against you. Okay. So when Henry Wu, the urologist who started a website called Dr Charlie Teo, and on that website he told flagrant lies like, I haven't published, I charge $150,000 for an operation. I wrote a letter to the College of Surgeons saying, listen, I was dragged over the coals for saying a disparaging remark about a fellow surgeon. Here's a surgeon who has started a website against me with all these disparaging remarks. Can you please look into it? They wrote me back and said, we've looked into it. This man has done nothing wrong. Not only has he done nothing wrong, but we don't feel like he's even worth contacting. So they didn't even contact him, and they closed the case. In other words, one rule for me and one rule for Henry Wu. Now, who's Henry Wu? Henry Wu turns out to be a counsellor on the College of Surgeons. Wow. And if you looked at his followers on his Stop Charlie Teo website, one of the followers was the president of the College of Surgeons at the time. One of the followers was Kate McClymont, and he had all these people following him, and nothing could be more destructive than his website, but he was not given any sort of disciplinary action, nor did they even contact him to tell him to take the website down.
Yeah, I think people would be surprised that it's a law unto itself.
There's one rule for Charlie Teo, and there's a rule for a member of the College of Surgeons or a counsellor on the College of Surgeons.
I mean, it seems to me that a lot of people don't understand, like with your court case, they hear the word court case, okay? And immediately they think, oh, it must be official. And the findings that you were, what was it, overly optimistic. That what sort of finding exactly is that? It's very arbitrary. It's not based on any rational risk benefit science or anything.
Everyone thinks it was a court of law. It was not a court of law. So they don't have to find proof beyond doubt. It's they get the opinion of a couple of your competitors who have been publicly against me in the past, but that didn't mean anything. And they say to those people, did his consent process fall below standard of care? And the answer was yes. So I was found guilty of unsatisfactory professional behaviour. And what's the punishment? The punishment, he should be reprimanded. So they reprimanded me, told that I fell below standard care, but they didn't take my licence off me. So I can still practice medicine and neurosurgery in Australia today if someone gave me a place to practice it. But when all this happened, the Healthscope, who were running the hospital that I was working at, said that you were previously targeted by your colleagues, which made you very high risk. Now you're targeted by the media, which makes you such high risk that we no longer will allow you to operate in our hospital. So then I went to other hospitals and said, okay, don't let me, bugger you. I'll go to another hospital. So I went to other hospitals and they all said, yeah, we want you because you bring in patients, you've got a great reputation. But then when they went to their medical boards, all hospitals have a medical board and they've got to run by, the people who apply for privileges. And all those medical boards, of course, had neurosurgeons on them, and all those neurosurgeons then said, no, we don't want him. So having applied to many, many hospitals, after a while I just gave up. And I knew that no one was going to give me privileges in Australia because it was determined by your colleagues or your competitors. So that's the situation. The situation is that I am legally allowed to practice neurosurgery. I've got a full licence, but no one is allowing me in.
So you basically had two neurosurgeons, one layperson and one judge, make this decision against you for the ban.
Yes.
And when you went for
and one of those surgeons, and both those surgeons had never done brainstem glioma by their own admission. One of those neurosurgeons said that his complication rate, mortality rate for a standard craniotomy, so a standard, non-difficult, standard craniotomy, his mortality rate was 2 to 3% by his own admission. My mortality rate for not standard operations, but the world's most difficult brain tumours is 0.1%. He kills 20 more people than I do for every craniotomy. And yet he was judging me. He's an academic neurosurgeon. If you look at his CV, he's got 43 publications, all from the lab, one clinical publication. He's probably done less than 1% of the number of tumours that I've done, and yet he was the one judging me and telling me that my consent process was too optimistic.
Wow. And actually, it's interesting how they sort of put themselves out as completely ethical in how they've persecuted you. I actually found yesterday in a news article that apparently 16 practitioners took their lives due to APRA kind of investigations between January 2018 through to December 2021, and 4 attempted suicides in instances of self-harm. So, you know, it's really happening across the board. It should be incredibly concerning to people that physicians, even if they toe the line, are actually operating in very hostile conditions. That if they do step out of line and do raise a red flag or concerns of any kind, they're going to lose they could potentially lose their license or ability to work. And that's a really big deal. And on top of which, the vindictive nature of the media, which will, if you look at what they've done to you, they've gone into everything from your personal life to just headlines that are completely untrue. And unless you're going to spend all your life in court, you know, of course, who knows if you're going to win or not, because the system is so stitched up, fighting all of this. So how can Australians even be guaranteed any quality of care within the system today? It's almost like, I have this feeling like during the mandate time, I actually had this feeling that they were deliberately wanting to get doctors that cared out of the system.
Whether their intention is malevolent or benevolent, no one will ever know. But the system is broken. So the system is where you've got a governing body that's almost like institutionalized narcissism. And what I mean by that is that a narcissist controls, they surveillance, and then they silence. And that's exactly what the governing bodies are doing. They control on the basis that they are doing it for the greater good, the public's greater good. So they are under the guise of this omniscient, good body that knows exactly how to bring stray doctors into control. So what that means is that they basically controlled by regulation, controlled by mandates, controlled by codes of conduct, and all those things are very reductionist. You can't control that way without with the complexity of medicine. So, you know, the analogy I give is that you do have to have some control, obviously. I mean, if you look at road rules, for example, if we didn't have control, people would be out of control. But it's only the minority. And so the poor old majority people who are law-abiding, safe, intelligent, you know, when they do something wrong, like, you know, drive over a line or speed to save someone's life or speed to actually get out of a danger, they can still be hit with a fine because it's a rule and you've broken the law, and it doesn't take into account the context. So too are there laws written up and regulations by these governing bodies, but it takes no account of the complexity of medicine. And one of the complaints about me was that I was overly optimistic because I didn't tell the patient that, I didn't exaggerate or underscore the possibility of death and paralysis. Yeah, actually I did, but even if I didn't, when you give a consent to a patient, you've got to take into so many different things, like, you know, their mood at the time, their language, their first language, their emotions, their social situation. Then you've got to take in your own considerations. You know, the last 10 cases you did, the last bad case you had, your interpretation of the literature, it's so complex. You can't have a system that doesn't take into consideration the context of that informed consent in that room between, you know, this relationship that you've developed between you and the patient. For example, they said to me, you know, did you underscore the fact that this tumour was so dangerous? I go, this patient flew from Perth. They were told by the surgeons, the entire medical multidisciplinary clinic in Perth, that the tumour was so dangerous that they're going to call it inoperable. So Am I meant to spend, half an hour of an hour consultation telling them how dangerous it is? No, I felt that my job was to say, listen, they're right. It's very difficult, and some people will consider it inoperable. But in my hands, I've done these before, and I think there's a chance we could extend your life.
Mm.
And to give them hope, because that's why they've come to you, not to dash their hope and sort of exaggerate the whole negativity of the situation they're in. And again, it's how can you expect an independent body who's not there at the time listening to the consent to really understand the complexity of that whole process?
Mm.
Okay, and then when they find you guilty, it's all this. How do they deal with it? It's all about surveillance. And what does surveillance do? It's like the panopticon, and what that means is that you're constantly being watched. You're in fear. You're worried that you're going to do something that will upset them or transgress, whatever they consider as the norm. So you become docile and you toe the party line. And what does that do for patients? It treats patients like some sort of number or some sort of diagnosis code. I don't care if you've got an appetite for risk. I don't care if you've got your daughter's wedding in 6 months' time. I'm going to tell you this tumour is inoperable because, that's what the majority of neurosurgeons would say. So I've got to say it as well. I'm not going to step out of line. I'm not going to put myself at professional suicide. And I'm just going to do exactly what they want me to do. And then when you don't do that, it's all about silencing. It's all about just get rid of the problem. So that's what they've done with me. They've silenced me. They've got rid of the problem.
Yeah.
What they
And
don't
forget that.
realise is that it's going to have this terrible knock-on effect back home. And what I mean by that is that others are going to then look at the situation and go, oh my God, shit, they destroyed Charlie Teo because all he did was operate on a tumour that he felt was operable when everyone else called it inoperable. Well, I'm not going to do that then. If someone says the tumour is inoperable, I'm going to toe the party line and call it inoperable. Even if my results are very, very good, I'm going to tell the patients that my results are so bad that they're the same as a person in Melbourne who's never done one of these cases before, because that's what they want me to do. And because I want to keep making money, I want to keep practicing my trade, I want to feed my family, and I know that if I don't do that, then this is what's going to happen. And those poor old neurosurgeons, those 16 people who committed suicide between 2008 and 2010, that is the tip of the iceberg. You have no idea of the number of doctors who, if they haven't suicided, their lives have been destroyed, their marriages have been destroyed, their children lives have been destroyed because of this terrible bullying culture in medicine.
Yeah. I mean, I know myself of one case that was years ago that I heard through the grapevine. It was actually in the coroner's court, BIFM, and because it was here, it was like the court investigating itself, which is essentially what is happening here. There's no overseeing body. There's no place for you to take your complaint further. So when it comes to the appeal that you just went through to the same
People.
Same people, and you brought forth a lot of evidence of what you'd actually done in the time that you've had this ban for all the operations that you've done overseas, and that made no difference to them.
No, I wasn't allowed to bring that up. So I got references. Right. I got references of all these neurosurgeons who had seen me operate, who knew my track record. I wanted to bring up all my publications. I have the highest H index out of any neurosurgeon in Australia, which is your your measure of academic integrity. So the most reputable academic neurosurgeon in Australia was not allowed to bring up any sort of past. And the judge then goes, no, we can't discuss the 11,000 cases. We're here to discuss the 2 patients on the table. That's all. And my lawyers go, well, hang on, you're criticising him for making a surgical decision of operability. Surely you want to know if his track record's good or not. Like if his track record was bad, then you're right, he shouldn't have recommended surgery. But can we please tell you about his track record, which he's published in a peer-reviewed journal? Nope, I wasn't allowed to bring that up. None of the references were allowed to bring up.
Yeah, and I wonder too, because it's brain cancer, which is relatively rare, or you don't hear of it often. whether people don't have an understanding of the fact that it's terminal, isn't what the cases you were talking about. So
Both
these
cases
patients
were terminal.
were already terminal. So
One of them was going to die in the next week or so, and the other one would have died probably about 3 months later.
So basically, these cases that were terminal, where the people had just a glimmer of hope to extend their life, that you could have, there was all benefit, very little risk, because they were only risking a week's worth of life or 3 months worth of life, ended up with you losing your license to operate in Australia, essentially. I mean,
So it wasn't even those families. I remember those families very, very well. They were loving, caring families. The patients were delightful, intelligent, hopeful patients who put their trust in me. And so it wasn't the families. You won't even believe this, but it's the truth. One of the family members wrote a letter of complaint to the West Australian Medical Council, not about me, but about the system.
wow.
Because after I operated on his wife, who had a bad outcome, he couldn't get her back to Perth because everyone was being petulant and saying, oh, you operated my Charlie Teo, so we're not going to take you back. It took him 3 weeks to get his poor wife back to Perth so she could die at home. Okay, so he wrote a letter of complaint. That letter of complaint was taken by a guy called Jeff. I won't mention his name, but Jeff. Jeff was the representative of the Medical Council in Western Australia. He took the complaint and wrote to the patient and said, do you mind if I pursue this and escalate it? And the guy goes, no, fine. If you want to do it for me, great. So I've seen all this because it all came to me, all the documentation. I saw his initial letter and I saw Jeff's escalation. Jeff then wrote a letter, not complaining about the system, but complaining about Charlie Teo. He lodged a complaint about me. And that wasn't even the husband's complaint. In fact, the husband wrote this beautiful sentence in his complaint saying, Charlie tried his best, but the outcome was bad. Okay, what happens then? So this letter is then, or this official complaint is then taken to the APRA or the ACCC or, whatever. And who's the representative for Western Australia on APRA? It's Jeff. Jeff writes a letter to himself saying, do you believe that we should escalate this to a higher level? Jeff writes back to himself and says, yes, I think we should.
It's actually absolutely absurd.
Comical. Yeah, I mean, unless, you just wouldn't believe it can happen, but it does. And it's not just me. I mean, the whole process has been labelled as, corrupt and lacking due process and all this kind of stuff. And there's been royal commissions and Senate inquiries. They've all condemned the system. So it's not as if it's ever had a clean bill of health. It's always been condemned. But the last royal commission came up with 100 and odd recommendations. It was like 128 recommendations, of which only 2 were followed through on. So, these royal commissions and Senate inquiries, they're all good intentions of trying to improve the system. But when it comes down to it, APRA has total autonomy. It is accountable to no one, not federal government, not state government. It can do whatever it likes.
So
there's not a single doctor in APRA. So you are judged by pen pushers, bureaucrats sitting behind a desk, knowing full well that people are dying because of their decisions, or maybe not even knowing that. But the bottom line is that people are dying because of their bad decisions.
And who made it this way? I mean, in other countries, is it different? So you've been able to work in other countries now. And I think it'd be interesting to tell the audience the difference of a different system, because this is all we've known here in Australia. How have you found it working? I mean, of all places, China is what?
Look, I'm sorry, I'm not up to date with the other systems. I've never faced them. I've never had to look into it. They've all been very accepting. They've accepted my credentialing. They've accepted my recommendations, and they've given me privileges. Look, I don't know how corrupt or how bad their systems are, because thankfully I haven't been the brunt of them or the victim of them at this stage.
So amazing. Like, you've been able to operate in China. And I was interested in a particular case.
No, Jeannie, it's anywhere in the world except Australia. Anywhere in the world except Australia, or any country that watched 60 Minutes. So America, I've been cancelled. Singapore, I've been cancelled. Papua New Guinea, I've been cancelled. New Zealand, I've been cancelled. So any country that gets 60 minutes and watches the 60-minute programs goes, look, he's just too controversial. We don't want him. And so we understand he might be skilled. We understand that you would like him here, to the neurosurgeons or the patients, but no, sorry, we just can't take him.
But it's funny because the thing is, you're not actually controversial. You're just a good surgeon and an honest surgeon.
No, I am controversial.
What in the way is you
wilting.
controversial in the fact that you've stepped
So,
outside the box?
no, I'm not a wilting flower. That's the controversy. So what they want is someone who may be the best at what they do, but you should never say that. You should never sort of flaunt your skills. You should never go to media. You shouldn't be given accolades. You should be just very, very humble, and you should sort of just stay under the radar, do what you do. And I think I could have possibly survived the Australian system if I had been one of those people. I think what I really did wrong, if I did anything wrong at all, was piss people off by rubbing it in their faces. Being on TV, getting awards, getting the Order of Australia, being Australia's most trusted person, having my own TV show. It just pissed them off so badly. But if I'd been a good surgeon who'd just been sort of working under the radar without any accolades, any recognition, I think it wouldn't have been so abrasive for them, and it would have been more acceptable for them.
So you think it's a case of like the tall poppy syndrome in Australia?
It's all it is. It's all it is. No one has said I'm a bad surgeon. Not a single person has said I'm a bad surgeon. Not even the people who hate me can't say that. They've said, the results speak for themselves. So it's not that I'm a bad surgeon. And so they've never been able to get me on my surgical skills or my patient care. So they had to get me on something else. And what they got me on was, being too optimistic and giving contrary second opinions.
Yeah, I mean, because if it's about surgery that you shouldn't have operated on them, you would look at the 36% C-section rate in Australia and go, well, look at all the surgeons and all the other surgeries that go wrong, or people who've had surgery that didn't need surgery, or were given drugs that didn't need it. And what medical harm is the third leading cause of death. So, I mean, you're operating on a very almost Olympic level, right? And
I'm operating on the world's most difficult tumours that competent neurosurgeons have called inoperable. So I don't condemn any of my colleagues for calling tumours inoperable. I believe they did it in the patient's best interests, that in their hands they were inoperable. The risk did not, the risk outweighed the benefit, and they truly felt the tumours were inoperable. And so these are the world's most difficult tumours. So your complication rate is going to be high. I mean, sorry, patients they're either going to die or accept a complication rate that's higher than most standard operations. So yes, that's the level I was operating at a very, very high risk level with very high risk patients.
And the risk was worth it because of the patients. Can you tell us about the case that is closest to your heart in this, of someone who was told that it was inoperable and you were able to operate on them and extend their life, as an example of obviously the many cases of people that you've helped?
So examples of the many cases. So, okay, a 59-year-old lady from Western Australia is seen by the biggest neurosurgery team in Western Australia. They call her tumour inoperable. They think it's malignant. They do a biopsy and they prove that it's malignant, and they offer her radiotherapy. She believes in alternative treatments, so she rejects the radiotherapy and starts on her own complementary alternative treatments and does pretty well for a while. But then the tumour gets bigger. She presents to me. I say, I can't operate in Australia. She flies to China. I take the tumour out. So it's not inoperable. It's actually operable. It's completely removed. And guess what? It wasn't even brain cancer. So the wrong call, the wrong diagnosis, the wrong biopsy of the result, and the wrong prognosis now she's likely cured. It was a low-grade tumour, completely removed, and that is how good it can be. So from imminent death, the wrong treatment, to probably cured. Okay, how bad can it be? It can be this bad. Little girl, nasty tumour, everyone calls it inoperable. I think I can take it out. I take it out. She does really well. She leaves hospital about 3 days later. She's out shopping or sightseeing in Sydney. She comes back to hospital with a terrible headache. She dies that night. A beautiful, gorgeous girl who bought Chinese pajamas to wear at the hospital because she knew I was Chinese. And so I'll never forget her. Never forget her. And why did she die? She died as a complication of surgery. She got hydrocephalus. So, you know, I've got to take full blame for that. You know, I didn't kill her, but she has certainly got a complication from surgery related to the surgery. You know, that's how bad it can be. Thankfully, there are more good cases than bad cases, or I wouldn't continue what I'm doing. So if my complication rate was 70%, my good outcome rate was 5%, you know, I'd think seriously about what I was doing. But, you know, the figures speak for themselves. Most people do very, very well. And those people who don't do well, they're incredibly kind. They're really kind to me. They call me up and say, listen, the outcome wasn't what we wanted. It wasn't what we were hoping for, but you tried your best. You treated us with respect, and they thank me, even when their loved ones die or get a complication. And again, it doesn't get much better than that. So, you know, it's very hard to not offer surgery when you've got those sort of results. And, you know, that sort of appreciation from patients who, you know, all they want to do is be heard. I have the appetite for risk. No one else is willing to take the risk. Can you please, you know, try and give us some hope? And yeah, that's what I do. But, you know, I've been punished terribly for it. You know, again, the worst thing about it, I'm going to be fine, okay? I'm operating overseas. I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm giving a lot of respect. I'm teaching overseas neurosurgeons, so I'm fine. The saddest thing is what's happening in Australia. And what's happening in Australia is that talented, good neurosurgeons are no longer taking risks because they saw what happened to me, and they're not taking out tumours that can be taken out, and they could take them out. And I see them every day. I promise you, Jenny, I see them every day. Cases where I know the surgeon, I know how good they are, I know they could do it, and they choose not to.
And we're talking, obviously, hundreds of people are dying.
Hundreds are dying.
And
tonight I'm making a presentation at a gathering, and I'm going to show them these cases because I want to show people that it's not me being hyperbolic or being alarmist. I'm going to show them cases of kids that have died with tumours that I could have taken out.
And of course, it's also hindering innovation. And
innovation.
I was interested in your case in China recently, where the patient had undergone surgery. They came out in a vegetative state, and then they were given supportive therapies and HBOT, and then now this patient is doing well off the ventilator, and I'm interested in the merging of how surgery and alternative complementary therapies are. Do you think that this is the way forward that we're going to see more and more, maybe not in Australia, but obviously in China? Would these patients who've come out in Australia out of surgery perhaps needed simply more support, and they would have extended their life?
100%. That young boy you're talking about is a 16-year-old boy from rural China, no money, no mother, a father who ignored his symptoms for months. He came in almost dead, could barely breathe, muscles had wasted away, couldn't hardly move. That child would not have had an operation in Australia or many other countries. They just wouldn't have had it. It was too high risk. Everyone knew that it would require inpatient rehabilitation for months, possibly years. I tried to do a patient like that in Spain, and my Spanish colleague, who's been incredibly supportive, said, Charlie, I'm sorry, but I just can't let you do it. It's going to cost the hospital or the patient too much money. It just won't be done. And I know that I can't do it in Australia. So yes, if that patient had been anywhere else apart from China, it would not have been done. And the result is fantastic. Not only he didn't wake up vegetative, he woke up quadriplegic, not moving a single thing. Fully conscious but not moving a single thing, as we predicted. The tumour was that bad. I can tell you now, I can show you the video. 6 months later, he's walking in a walker. He's still got I think he's still got a tracheostomy. I didn't see that on the video, but he's certainly walking now. And you know, the Chinese transferred him to a rehab hospital at their cost. He couldn't pay for it. He's now in a dedicated neuro-rehabilitation hospital of 450 beds. He's getting the best care. He got HBOT every day. And there's nowhere else in the world that he would have got that sort of treatment.
That's just truly amazing. I thought we could talk about what you're doing now in terms of the brain scanning and how that came about as a result of, I guess, you having to pivot your life.
Well, look, it's good to end on a good note, and that's a very positive note. And, you know that I've been bitching for the last 40 minutes, and I'm sorry about that. But here's what I should have been concentrating on. And it's the old dictum that one door closes, another opens. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And really, that's the message I'd love to get across to people, that, you know, these hurdles are put in front of you, not to stop you, but for you to just climb over them and become better, bigger and better. And so I'm loving teaching. I'm loving the respect I'm getting. I'm loving disseminating the knowledge that I've accumulated over 45 years. I had time when they stopped me from operating to review literature articles that I couldn't even understand before because I just never had the time. And part of that review of those literature articles was review of an article called the HCP, the Human Connectome Project. And I never had the time to really understand it. But after what happened here, I had the time. And that has now translated into a medical software company that has developed a software that's going to change the world. It basically can now scan someone's brain and show how the brain is working, not just how it looks, and not only how it's working in simple things like movement and speech, but how it's working in terms of higher cognitive function like imagination and empathy and pleasure. And we can actually see the parts of the brain that light up with those sort of functions. We've now taken that software and translated it to patient care. And we've started a clinic in Australia called Singulum. That clinic can now scan people with brain disorders that don't have any structural problems. So, you know, I'm talking things like depression, anxiety. Roger. I'm talking about things like you're tapping on the. I'm talking. Sorry about that. I've got a buddy here who's waiting to give me a lift. I'm talking things like depression, anxiety, brain injury, Alzheimer's, any neurological problem that previously could not be shown on an imaging study can now be shown on an imaging study. And it's so specific and so comprehensive that we can take those abnormalities and change them using non-invasive techniques like transcranial magnetic stimulation, change these areas of activity and improve patients' symptoms and their conditions. It's dramatic. It's been recognised overseas by a couple of Harvard graduates, and they've wanted us to go overseas and open a similar clinic in America, which we've done. We've opened a clinic in Europe. We're going to open another clinic in Europe, hopefully opening a clinic in Melbourne, using this technology that I would never have had the time to develop if it wasn't for the vilification by the media and by my colleagues here in Australia.
I'm surprised they're even allowing you to open the clinic. You know, like it's kind of innovative. How?
No, they'll try and destroy it. I'm sure. I'm sure they'll try and destroy it. But look, I've been a little bit more strategic. So one of the things I didn't quite appreciate was that you've got to surround yourself with like-minded people, and I was all alone in my practice. Well, the good thing is that there have been like-minded people who believe in this software, who believe in what we're doing, and they've joined the Singulum Clinic. very intelligent, very driven, very passionate psychiatrists, integrative doctors, neurologists, other neurosurgeons. And so it's hard to destroy a group of people who are doing the right thing, publishing, etc., etc. It's very easy to destroy one single person by destroying their character. But you can't do that to an entire clinic or an entire consortium of academic doctors.
That's great. I do love the way you're thinking here, and it's certainly how we're also thinking in terms of Health Alliance Australia in spreading the word about doctors like yourself who are doing amazing things. And I'm really
you've got to stay positive, Jeannie. And the conversation we had before the podcast was, both of us were sort of disturbed and worried that it won't change. But we can't think that way. We've got to think that people like you, Health Alliance Australia, people like me who have a voice, we will change the diaspora, and we will change the whole, sort of landscape of medicine and the way it's delivered and the way doctors are governed. We've got to believe that it will change for the better. Or you've got to maintain that hope.
I guess it's just a hurdle, isn't it? Like, just like one of your surgeries, it was particularly difficult, seems impossible. And I think sometimes we can look at the trajectory of what we're seeing in front of us and feel like it's an impossible task to beat the system. But as you say, we're all stronger together. And so I do encourage people to spread the word, distribute this interview and others that we have on our website. Now, was there anything else you would like to add? I know you've got to go to this interview that you would like to address the audience with.
Look, I just want people to know that the positive that's come out of this is that, I'm helping people now with mental health conditions, which is, I could probably help more people now. I got as much satisfaction out of treating a girl, 25-year-old girl who was suicidal, bedbound for 6 months with depression. She tried everything. She came to our clinic. We treated her with targeted, personalised TMS, and she is now cured. She's not on any medication. And I thought, after I saw her in clinic, I thought, well, hang on, that's as satisfying as a brain tumour, but nowhere near as risky. So, it's a very positive outcome, even though the intention, of course, was all negative to get rid of me completely. It's been a very positive sort of result.
Yeah, I mean, I think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So anyway, we might get you back at some time to talk about those results, but I'll close off today with my little spiel.
You might have to change your spiel after that podcast, after I was so negative.
No, I really appreciate your candor. I think people need to hear it. I mean, hard truths. So in closing, we wanted to remind viewers to check out our other podcasts, which feature leading medical researchers like Professor Garth Nicholson, Dr. Kevin McCann, Professor Robin Cosford, and Dr. Richard Fleming, and alternative healing practitioners, and the late Professor Francis Boyle, who drafted the US Biological Weapons Act, Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989, or his warning to the world. We cover overly optimistic topics such as healing from life-threatening illnesses that have in many cases been written off as incurable by the mainstream medical system, but also other controversial topics such as the intentional blood clotting cover-up. So if you'd like a full list, please go to our Rumble, to our website, and you'll also find them on our Rumble channel. BitChute also hosts our censored videos. We will put this video on YouTube as well. Health Alliance Australia opposes harmful health measures, laws and mandates, provides educational content that hopefully will inspire you on your own health journey. Please distribute as we are heavily censored. Email or message to your family and friends. We can also help with the algorithm by subscribing, commenting and sharing. If you wish to support our work, you can do so by visiting the donate page on healthallianceaustralia.org. Also join our free mailing list. If you wish to support brain cancer research, please visit the Charlie Teo Foundation.org.au. All the other important links with regard to Dr. Charlie Teo will also be in the description and on our website. I will also link to a couple of other of his podcasts, which are particularly interesting. Health Alliance Australia and I are also active on LinkedIn, so please join us there as well. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Professor Teo, for your time today.
Pleasure. Lovely.